Welcome everybody. I'm Reagan Cusimanio. I am the co-chair of the Public Policy and Advocacy Committee at the Overland Park Chamber of Commerce. And we would like to welcome everybody in the audience today to the Public Policy Forum for the forum today for Pam Shernuk and, is that correct? Mm-hmm. And Croft. The Public Policy Forum today is hosted by the Johnson County Public Policy Council, and we would like to thank them for hosting. The Public Policy Council is a collaborative effort of the 10 chambers of commerce representing more than 5,000 Johnson County businesses. In addition to hosting today's forum, the Public Policy Council also conducts other voter education efforts, including publishing a wealth of candidate information on the Council's website, which is located at www.votejoco.com. Today, I'd like to introduce and welcome Croft and Pam Shernuk, and I would like to introduce them. They are both vying for the candidacy for House of Representatives, District 8. And what we will do is today's forum will follow a very simple format. We will give each candidate a 1.5 minute opening statement, and after opening comments, we're going to rotate through those questions that were written by the Public Policy Council. We will get through as many questions as we possibly can through the amount of time that we have allotted. We will not be taking questions from the audience today. This is simply a forum and not a debate. At the conclusion of our Q&A period, we are going to give each candidate the opportunity to offer closing remarks. So with that, we are going to start. Prior to the forum, we allowed each member to draw, and those determined who would go first. And we are going to start with Croft, and then we will follow with Pam. So, Mr. Croft, if you would like to start.
All right, thanks, Reagan. So I'm Croft. I am the representative for District 8. I've been there for 6 years. As I've said before, I've been married for 39 years. I have 2 kids and 6 grandkids. The oldest is 16 and just won her first, almost 16, and just had her first horse riding competition. So pretty excited about that. We also have a puppy, so her name is Zoe. A lot of fun with the dachshund. I spent 30 years in the Army. And started in Florida, grew up, that's where I grew up, was born, and then joined the Army and went all around the world. 2 deployments to Iraq, and then came back here to Kansas, to Fort Leavenworth. And I had to, when I was retiring out of there, we finally had the opportunity to choose where we were going to live, and we chose here. We've now been here 11 years, with 2 years before that, so about a total of 13 years. My daughter met her husband here. My son got excited about science here, and now he's a scientist for the Navy. So we have a lot of things that's positive here. And as we retired out of Fort Leavenworth, we moved to the community we're in. And it's just like being in the military. The community here is so great. Just recently, when my wife was hospitalized for something, the neighbors came over without asking and took care of the puppy, and then had food in the refrigerator when we got home. And that's the Kansas way. That's why we chose Kansas. That's why we want to stay here. And we're so excited to be able to continue to serve the people of Kansas.
Thank you. Pam, your 1.5 minutes.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you to the Overland Park Chamber and the Johnson County Public Policy Council for hosting today. My name is Pam Shernuk, and I'm running for State Representative in House District 8. I'm a lifelong Kansan, and I've lived in Overland Park for 34 years. My husband and I have 2 married sons who both graduated from Blue Valley Northwest High School, and 2 grandsons, and I retired from Blue Valley School District in 2015. Since retiring, I've been very active in the community. I've served as the former chair of the Johnson County Commission on Aging. I've served on various Blue Valley School District committees. I volunteer in our public schools, and I'm currently serving on the board of directors for Kansas Advocates for Better Care. Public service runs deep in my family. My father served in the Kansas legislature for 20 years as a Republican, and even served 4 years as Speaker of the House. However, today's Republican Party is no longer my father's Republican Party. My father's party stood for fiscal responsibility, personal freedoms, and strong communities. But today, we're seeing a shift toward policies that are extreme and divisive, ones that threaten the very foundation of our democracy. I believe in a different path, one that brings people together, focuses on pragmatic solutions, and works across party lines to get things done. That's why I'm running for office, to continue my father's legacy of service and compassion, but with a renewed focus on the values that unite us rather than divide us.
Thank you. We'll start here with our questions, and Pam, you will start off with our first question. And as a candidate, what are your top 3 policy issues?
Thank you. My top 3 policy issues are public education, healthcare, and taxes. First, education. We need to fully fund our public schools, including special education. We need to make our public schools a priority and make sure our local school boards feel supported by the Kansas legislature. And right now, I don't think they do. Second, healthcare. We need to rein in healthcare costs, starting with expanding Medicaid. Every Kansan deserves access to affordable health care. Kansas is losing billions of dollars to other states that expanded Medicaid, leaving more than 150,000 Kansans without insurance. These folks drive up health care costs for the rest of us. Additionally, we must protect women's reproductive rights. Most Kansans thought this was settled in August of '22 when they voted against the anti-abortion constitutional amendment, which my opponent supported. While my opponent claims that the people have spoken, extremists in the Kansas legislature continue to introduce bills that limit women's rights and diminish a woman's right to make her own health care decisions. Finally, we need tax relief. The top issue I hear while knocking doors is that taxes are too high. We need to provide property tax relief, especially for seniors and lower income families, which I hope to discuss further in the forum.
Thank you. Chris, same question for you.
All right, thank you. So my top 3 are taxes, education, and public safety, to include state and national security, as you lump those in there. If I had more in there, I would go down there. But the taxes piece, agreed. As they're out there walking, that is the one thing we're hearing is property taxes are the number one thing. And I know we're going to probably talk taxes here a little bit more. But that is the one thing that the governor's also said that's off the table in 2025, is property taxes. We had it in the tax bill this year, and it was removed out of the tax bill. So we're back in, we want to get that put back in there specifically for the property tax, and we'll cover that later on. For education, absolutely agree with fully funding. I've voted to fully fund education ever since I've been there. In fact, on my first year, I went against my leadership by voting with no strings attached as we came through there. The education also, though, must be tied to workforce development and where we're going with workforce, and make sure we have the right people there. And then on the public safety side, and I'm sure as we get further into this thing, we're going to cover that about fentanyl and how it's come across, and just the unbelievable toll it's taking on our youth and what it's doing. And then as associated with that, we also have the human smuggling. It was just recently that they captured or stopped a car that had a trailer load of people inside there, and they were smuggling them across, coming up I-35 and through into Missouri. We've got a real issue there, and those are the 3 issues that I really want to focus on this time. There's more, but those are your top 3 because that was your question you asked me.
Thank you. We'll go to question 2, and we'll start with you, Chris. What are your views on state tax policy, being as specific as you can?
Okay, so I figured that's where we're going. So again, number 1 topic, as we've already said, both of us, and we're out there walking and talking at the door, is the property taxes. And the question becomes is, why is it that way? And it's the valuation is part of the problem here. And what was not available was the fact that you could use a local or a private determination of the valuation of your house. You had to do across the board for the big group of the area, and then you would have to go back and fight that. So we fixed that this year, and we got more work to do there. My next bill, the one that I did work on and I did put through, was mediation. Specifically on the mediation board is the second piece, where the small claims court comes in. Right now you could have a lawyer. That then forces our seniors to have to fight through a lawyer. I'd rather not do that, and if we do mediation, it's a much better process, and you get a determination usually better in that environment. I'd also like to do the 100,000 exemption. We talked about that before. It was removed out. I would like to see a single rate, but right now we're where we are. We understand that, with a higher personal deduction. We got to move there in a very conservative and a very thought out process, and I'm perfectly good with that. My problem with this whole thing is I'm just really concerned that we are we are removing the very people from their homes that built this great community. And that's those seniors. It's a tax on unrealized gains on their home valuation, and it's literally sending them other places. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question for you, Pam.
Thank you. Well, first, I've read the Chamber's legislative tax priorities, and I am in alignment with all of them, and I agree that we need to ensure that our tax system is fair and equitable and does not disproportionately harm working families. And as we reduce taxes, we need to make sure that we do so in a responsible way that doesn't adversely affect our public school funding or essential services within the community. I feel compelled to mention that voters in my district have been receiving mailers from dark money sources that support my opponent. These mailers make outlandish claims, such as calling me a liberal who opposed efforts to reduce property taxes and calling me a tax and spend liberal. I don't even know where that came from. I was a moderate Republican my whole life until 2021, and now I'm a moderate Democrat who still holds those fiscally conservative values. I can assure you that when elected, I will not advocate to raise your taxes. As a side note, it was recently reported by the Kansas Reflector that my opponent is on the record supporting a 0% corporate tax initiative. Specifically, his objective is to reduce the corporate tax rate overall with the intent to drive it to zero. This plan is reminiscent of former Brownback tax experiment that nearly bankrupted the state and would shift the tax burden to hardworking families and homeowners. I support tax relief for individuals, families, seniors, and veterans, not giant multinational corporations.
Thank you. We'll go on to question number 3 around K-12 education, and Pam, we'll start with you. What are your views on K-12 education funding and accessibility?
Thank you. I strongly believe that our public schools should be fully funded, including special education. I oppose school vouchers in any form which diverts public tax dollars to private schools. My opponent has repeatedly supported school vouchers, which would jeopardize the strength of districts like Blue Valley and Olathe. You can verify his voting record at kslegislature.gov. My opponent will tell you that he voted to fully fund our public schools, but what he won't tell you is that he had no choice. Until this year, the courts controlled school funding to ensure the legislature fulfilled its legal obligations to fund our public schools. He will also tell you that he voted to fund special education this year. The fact is that the legislature allocated $75 million to fund special education statewide, but we are still short $400 million when it comes to funding our most vulnerable students. Next year, the Kansas legislature will be tasked with rewriting the school finance formula, which could impact the state's public education system for years to come. It's imperative that we elect candidates with a proven track record of supporting public education. I'm endorsed by 3 former Blue Valley superintendents and the top 4 pro-public education organizations in the state of Kansas. My opponent has 0 pro-public education endorsements. His lack of endorsement speaks volume to the lack of confidence public school advocates have in his willingness to properly address the future of public education.
Same question for you, Chris. What are your views on K-12 education funding and accessibility?
Yeah, so from the beginning, again, you go there and look at my record. From the beginning, I voted to fully fund schools. I do have a choice every time. Everybody up there has a choice. If we chose not to do it, then there would be consequences, but that's all right. That's what we have. That's the right of the process, and you would think somebody that's been around it would understand that. My mom was a single parent. She was a teacher. I'm a product of public schools. My kids are a product of public schools. I'm a huge supporter of public schools. Absolutely no questions asked. And I will continue to be that way. It just is amazing to me as we go through this process. And yeah, actually I did go out there and I do support the $75 million we gave. That was more than what the governor asked us to do. The governor asked us to do 72 or 60 something, 72, and then we did 75. Here's the problem. It's not the states and the locals that's giving the money. It's actually the federal folks that have said they would give to 40% and they're not giving their 40%. If they gave their 40% like they said they would, then we'd be at $167 million more than what we should have. So actually the states and the local groups are doing their fair share in this process. There is going to be a new formula. I'm excited about that opportunity. But here's the thing that bothers me. We give the money to the local school boards. The local school boards gives the money, and as we're out there walking and talking to teachers, how many hundreds of dollars they're paying out of their pocket to put supplies in the classroom. I don't understand this. It doesn't make sense.
Thank you. We'll go to the next question regarding economic development, and we'll start with you, Chris.
Okay.
What types of economic development policies do you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas?
Yeah, thanks. So, as my opponent mentioned, that there was a phone call. Those are constituent phone calls that I have every week. I've done it for 3 years at the request of my constituents. It's actually been a great learning experience and an opportunity for us to share ideas, go through the process. Not every idea that's on there is a good idea. Many of them are just ideas, and we talk them through and we go through that. So one of the things that specifically about businesses, and we waited to do the business until we got the individuals done, and then we could get our spending under control. So we've created a new budgeting process this year that we're right now going through that, so that way we're back in this process and not just relying on what the governor gives us. We're not taking any power from her. We're actually starting to do what our job is, and that we haven't done in the last 25 years, at least from a perspective of just using our budget. But going from a 3-factor to a single factor, the key to that is that supporting state businesses. That's supporting businesses in this state. It possibly will drive up some revenue. So the idea was to use that additional revenue that comes in from outside, then to buy down the corporate tax to a certain point, and that way, then it is all equalized. By the way, that's something that the chamber here supports. That bill was something that most of the chamber supported. We also did some things on red tape. We have to remove the red tape. We got the REINS Act where we're pulling in the regulatory state. If it's over $1 million that the regulation is going to require over a 5-year period, then you have to come back to the legislature. We talk about one of the key things is infrastructure, and I'll probably try to get them worked in other places. So.
Thank you. Same question for you, Pam.
Thank you. I support a combination of policies that focus on fostering innovation, supporting small businesses, and ensuring that workers have skills they need for today's workforce. These policies include partnering with educational institutions to expand training and certification programs in high-demand areas, also by working to increase childcare accessibility and affordability for our young working families, and working with local officials to increase affordable housing in the area. Providing targeted tax credits and grants to small and locally owned businesses, particularly those that are startup businesses or are trying to expand. We also need to expand Medicaid so more folks have health insurance and are less likely to miss work because of health-related issues. Encouraging collaboration between the state and local governments and private companies to stimulate investment in key sectors is critical. Finally, providing incentives for research and development, particularly in areas of agriculture, energy, and healthcare, where Kansas has the potential to be a national leader.
Thank you, Pam. We'll go on to our next question around workforce. And Pam, we'll start with you on that one. What would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce?
To grow and develop the Kansas workforce, I would focus on strengthening education, workforce training, and business development while addressing key barriers that prevent people from entering or staying in the workforce. My priorities would include, number 1, investing in education and workforce training. This can be done by expanding access to technical and vocational education, by increasing funding for community colleges and trade schools. Number 2, supporting child care and family services. A top priority would be to increase investment in affordable child care to ensure that parents, particularly women, can fully participate in the workforce. This includes providing grants and incentives to help child care providers expand their services and keep costs low for families. 3, encouraging business expansion and entrepreneurship. This could be done by offering tax incentives to small businesses and startups to encourage innovation and job creation. And 4, increasing access to higher education and lifelong learning. We need to make college more affordable and expanding scholarships and grant programs for Kansas students, particularly in fields that are essential to the state's economy.
Thank you. Same question for you, Chris.
Yeah, so baseline off of that was one of the things I was going to cover before about infrastructure. But in there, what we've been doing is running a roundtable with business leaders to talk about how we can improve the workforce. And the number one topic that's come up is childcare. And I must give credit here that the chamber here actually has been a leader in trying to figure out how to solve this childcare issue. I know they've actually commissioned a study with United We, and I'm looking forward to the process that comes out of there. There's a lot in there, though, about regulatory environment. But then we've specifically asked for to make sure you tell us what we can do to solve some of it if it's a requirement that we've put on it. We worked with the governor on this topic. We actually developed a program on child care. The bill was moved forward through the House. It just didn't make it through the Senate. It is something that we spent a lot of time with the governor. And then the other thing we're working on with talking to KHA and some of the issues that they're finding on child care is that if they offer child care to patients or their local community, which they're a part of the community, they lose federal funding. So we're working now with the federal folks to see if we can come up with a way to solve that problem as well. Now look, we've also given money to the Chamber of Commerce, to the Commerce Department, so they can go out there and start a program about what's great about Kansas. We've already talked about the child care, and then the last thing I think is really important. We've got to stop talking about how the bad things are in this state and start talking about the great things. This area has wonderful schools. It has wonderful infrastructure. You drive other states and look at their roads, our dirt roads are better than their highways. This is a great place to be, and we've got to talk about it that way.
Thank you. We'll go to the next question around access and affordability to post-secondary education. And Chris, we're going to start with you. So the question is, what are your views on the state's role with respect to ensuring access and affordability of post-secondary education?
Yeah, so I've been a big proponent of the Kansas Promise Act and many other things like that, the scholarship programs. I think the apprenticeships are a fabulous opportunity for getting folks out there and getting them into the workforce, but also understanding that while they're growing up. The same thing with internships. I actually am a huge fan of internships. I wish I'd have had that opportunity when I came up. It just wasn't there for me. So I think we've done a lot of work on those environments. I know we've done a lot of work on that environment, and we need to continue that process and continue to move. I think there's been a big push to get away from just having to go to a four-year college, but to come to the community colleges. I think those are in the trade schools. I think that's really important, and what's nice is, as you go over here to K-State and their campus here, they don't take students away from Johnson County Community College. They actually work with the community college for those that would want to go to a four-year school but can't afford to go. And they have a partnership where they're going forward with things. The one thing that I thought was interesting too is the K-State campus focuses on things that Johnson County Community College can't do, and they have laboratories set up in the basement of their building or on the first floor of that building. So you can come in and get internships there and then go out to the workforce and get into the jobs faster than waiting to go through the whole four-year program. And the last thing is we're working to create a STEM/STEAM program, which is on science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And the point there is that we have some requirements here. We don't have enough. It's modeled after DoD program. So we've got to do something here, and we're getting forward with that process.
Thank you. Same question for you, Pam.
Thank you. Kansas plays a critical role in ensuring access and affordability to post-secondary education, and investing in higher education is not just about individual student success, but also about fostering economic growth, innovation, and a skilled workforce for the state. Here are a few key points that I would consider. Number one, increased state funding. Kansas has excellent institutions, but funding has fluctuated through the years, which has led to tuition hikes. The state should prioritize consistent and increased funding for their public institutions, community colleges, and technical schools. This could help reduce tuition costs and alleviate the financial burden of students. Number two is expanding financial aid. Kansas should explore expanding scholarships and grants, particularly for students from low-income and middle-income families, to ensure that education remains accessible regardless of their financial background. Number three, encouraging technical and vocational training. Supporting technical and vocational education programs is vital to address the growing demand for skilled labor in industries like manufacturing, healthcare, and technology. And finally, addressing student debt. The state can help students by advocating for policies that limit student debt, such as income-based repayment plans and loan forgiveness programs for graduates working in public service or high-demand areas within Kansas, such as teaching or healthcare.
Thank you. Our next question is for Pam. We're going to start with you. What are your views on healthcare policy and Medicaid expansion?
Thank you. As most of you know, Kansas is one of only 10 states that has not yet fully expanded Medicaid. And it's time that we put the health and well-being of all Kansans ahead of party politics. Even though the overwhelming majority of Kansans support Medicaid expansion, my opponent, as the majority leader, has refused to bring the matter to the floor of the House for a vote. Expanding Medicaid would provide coverage to an estimated 150,000 Kansans who fall in the coverage gap, earning too much money to qualify for Medicaid and not enough money to be able to pay for their own private health insurance. Medicaid expansion would bring significant federal dollars to Kansas, potentially generating billions, that's with a B, in economic growth. Currently, your tax dollars are being sent to places like New York and California that have already expanded Medicaid, while fellow Kansans are left uninsured. Many rural hospitals and clinics in Kansas are under financial stress, and some have even closed. Medicaid expansion could help stabilize these facilities by reducing uncompensated care costs, ensuring that hospitals, especially in our rural areas, can remain open. My opponent has argued that IDD wait lists have to be reduced first before we can consider Medicaid expansion. The truth is, we don't have to choose between helping the disabled and the working poor. Despite what Mr. Croft thinks, Kansas can do both. Expanding Medicaid is just the right thing to do.
Same question for you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks. And you know, it's interesting, the bill actually never got out of committee, so it's not something I can bring up if it doesn't come out. Never got passed. So the thing about this bill, and that's the details in all of it, it sounds good when you're looking at the bumper sticker, but when you start digging into the details, they say it'll create 23,000 new jobs. There was no proof of that in there. It said it would save rural hospitals. Even the governor says it won't save rural hospitals. $14 million, and this will bring in maybe $1 million. That's not going to save the rural hospitals. There's other things that have to be done. But that's why we're going to continue to debate this topic, and I think this year we will have another good debate about it, and I'm excited about that. But while we're waiting for that, we want to go, okay, so what are we going to do about it? So let me tell you some of the things. So this year we did something on hospital assessments. We moved it from 5.5 to 6, so that way it would save millions of dollars for federal funding for our rural hospitals. That alone was a huge deal. Then you have Medicaid reimbursement rates. We increased those at the state level, which it hasn't been done in many years. The IDD wait list, we added money in there that the governor did not add in her budget. Senior living facilities for rebasing. The GMEs, that's the one thing that's bothersome for me in this process. You say that you're adding new people to a list that's already a wait list and you can do both. You're not adding the number of doctors. So this year we added 10 new scholarships for primary care physicians. Next year we're going to go for 15, that's our goal. 15 every year for 5 years. They must remain in the state for 5 years after. And that gives us 75 new doctors. Those are the things we're going to do as it relates to healthcare.
Thank you. Our next question is around foreign land ownership. And we'll start with you, Chris.
Okay.
The question is, there's been a lot of discussion about foreign land ownership, leasing and purchasing equipment containing foreign manufactured parts. What factors do you consider when attempting to balance national security concerns against free enterprise and private property rights?
Yeah, that's actually a very tough one, right? So as we're talking about personal rights on property. But here, again, in this process, we had a bill last year that focused only on agriculture and made agriculture seem like they were the problem in this thing. Actually, in 1981, we passed some good laws there that set conditions that have restricted the number of foreign adversaries that actually own land in Kansas. So that's a good thing, but could possibly change as we're moving forward because all the other states are enacting things. So we looked at it from a land perspective, and we solved the bill there, but first we went into the financial institutions and we limited our ability to invest in the foreign adversarial countries. And according to our treasurer, Stephen Johnson, he said it was, thank goodness we did it when we did, because we saved a lot of money to the overall process by doing it when we did it. And that was a group effort across the board, including the governor's office. And in all this stuff, we worked with the governor trying to find out the best solution. One of the solutions was to create a land council that you had to go ask Mother May I from the government if you could buy land no matter where you're from. That to us was a problem. So this one that we created was an after the fact, if you're from a foreign adversary country and it's listed, then you cannot buy land. It did not include housing because of the Fair Housing Act. There were some issues out there. We want to make sure we work through it and move slowly. We did a lot of the things. We also had one as it related to contracting. You could not use the foreign drones with contracting with the state. All those things didn't pass, and that's okay. We're going to work through this thing and continue to work because it's really important we get this thing right.
Same question for you, Pam.
Thank
Do you
you.
want me to repeat it? It was kind of long.
Sure.
Okay. There's been a lot of discussion about foreign land ownership, leasing and purchasing equipment containing foreign manufactured parts. What factors do you consider when attempting to balance national security concerns against free enterprise and private property rights?
Thank you. Well, when discussing foreign land ownership, particularly from China, I think it's important to prioritize facts over fear. Kansas should be welcoming to all families and business owners wanting to start a new life in our state. There are real national security issues concerning China and other countries targeting sensitive military locations, but banning foreign land ownership does not address our most pressing national security concerns. Instead, such a ban would disproportionately target homeowners and small business owners in places like Johnson County. The real threat comes not from land ownership, but from other areas such as breaches in cybersecurity. Kansas has little to fear from foreign land ownership because foreign entities only own a small fraction of U.S. agricultural land. The Kansas legislature only meets for about 4 months out of the year. And every day that's spent on bills and resolutions about China, Taiwan, the Middle East, or Mexico is a day that we are not working to address local issues about public schools, child care costs, health care, and taxes.
Thank you. We'll go on to our next question. And Pam, we'll start with you and then we'll move to Chris. How control over decision-making is divided among the state legislature and local governments, including school boards, on issues such as taxation, economic development, and education has been a matter of debate. What are your views on this issue?
Well, thank you. First and foremost, I support local control whenever possible. I believe local school boards should retain control over education policies, curriculum decisions, staffing, and their own budget. At the same time, the state legislature plays an important role in setting statewide standards and ensuring adequate and equitable funding for all Kansas schools. I support a balanced approach to taxation where both state and local governments have roles to play. The state legislature should ensure a fair and progressive tax structure that provides for statewide services and responsibilities like public education, infrastructure, and health services. Local government should have the flexibility to levy taxes that are appropriate for their specific needs, such as funding for local public works, community development projects, and public safety. Finally, the state legislature should avoid imposing unfunded mandates on local governments. When the state sets new standards or requirements, it should ensure that local governments are provided with the financial resources necessary to implement them.
Same question for you, Chris.
Yeah, I believe in the local control. I believe in every level has its responsibilities, from the federal down to the state, down to local. I think our requirements are, as mentioned, are to provide resources, especially as we put requirements on there. But also, and this is where it gets a little difficult at times, is you don't just give money freely. What is the requirement? What is the expectation coming there, and setting those guidelines? I think that's kind of important as we go through it. But I do believe that, especially your local school boards, those should be allowed to do the things they need to do, just like we funded. We fund them to fund schools and take care of the schools, and we allow them that freedom. And I agree with that. The challenge also, again, becomes is when the outcomes aren't achieving the expectations that we have, right? And so I think we've got to work towards that aim and how we get there. But I'm just saying that I do believe in the local control. I think it's very important as we go forward.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank both of our candidates today for sharing their thoughts on the important issues that we've covered. We're now going to turn to our closing comments and remind both of you that you have a minute and a half to share your remarks. And we're going to invite you, Chris, to start with your, yes.
Since I started, does she go first?
Well, this says that you get to start with your closing
just-
comments.
all the way through.
Okay, that's
So-
fine, that's fine. Didn't realize that,
I
sorry.
appreciate
No, that's
that
okay.
you brought that up, but you do get to start with your
Yeah.
closing comments.
That's fine. So, look, I will tell you, I really appreciate being in this community. What's a little frustrating to me is that every time we come to these things, and every time I've been in here, it talks about how I'm not a Kansan when you and the other person is. You know, look, I love this community. The governor's not from Kansas. I love the opportunity to come into an environment where we get to all come together and be one team as we're moving forward for the people of Kansas. I try very hard to focus on the windshield and what's forward and not what's behind me and tearing other people down. My goal is always to provide that idea and working together as a team and listening to what everybody has to say. And you've already heard earlier about that I have these calls. Well, I have these calls because it's very important. I do monthly coffees. I go through this whole process and I spend time because I truly believe in what we're doing here. I truly believe in Kansas. My wife and I love it here. This is a great place to be, a great environment. I don't believe this is a flyover state. I honestly believe this is a destination state. This is a state that when people come here, they don't want to leave. And that's what I'm excited about, is getting to share that positive attitude about this state, because too often we have the negative. I'm telling you, this is just a wonderful place, and my wife and I really enjoy this opportunity. And I really enjoy the opportunity for serving, and thank you guys for that opportunity, and I hope you'll vote for me again on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam, a minute and a half for you.
Thank you. And thank you again to the Overland Park Chamber for hosting. As a longtime resident of Overland Park with deep roots in Kansas, I understand the values and needs of our community. I dedicated my life to public service, working to strengthen our public schools, support our seniors, and advocate for bipartisan solutions that benefit everyone. My loyalties will not be to out-of-state PACs. I won't win any Golden Fork awards, and I won't waste time on issues that Kansans don't care about. I'm committed to expanding access to affordable health care, including Medicaid, protecting reproductive freedom, and standing up for the rights of all Kansans, regardless of their background. My opponent's stance on school vouchers, the flat tax, the corporate tax, and reproductive freedom does not reflect the inclusive, forward-thinking leadership that District 8 needs. I'm running to continue the legacy of compassion and service that my father exemplified, and I believe in working across the aisle to bring positive change for families, children, and small businesses. Together we can build a brighter future for Kansas, one that values public education as well as the health and well-being of our citizens, supports working families, and protects the rights of everyone. My name is Pam Shernuk, and I would appreciate your vote on November 5th.
Thank you. I'd like to thank both of you for participating today in our forum and your willingness to serve the people of Johnson County. I want to remind the audience that today's recording will be available along with other election-related information on the Vote Joco website, and that is www.votejoco.com. And I just want to remind everybody that voter registration ends on Tuesday, October 15th, which was yesterday. Where's that?
It's
Today. It's been a little bit of a week. Advanced voting begins on Saturday, October 19th, and election day is Tuesday, November 5th. Thank you so much for engaging with us, and we look forward to seeing you again.